What's up, everybody? This is Pi with SLRLounge.com. Welcome to another episode of Constructive Critique. This is where you all go to SLRLounge.com, go to the forums by clicking right here. And we apologize, the forums were down for a couple days. We were doing some maintenance on them. They are back up. And you just click on this little Constructive Critique section right here. Be sure to read our lovely little Constructive Critique sticky just to make sure that everybody follows our rules of participation, and be sure to critique others just as much as you request critiques. All right, let's get started. We're going to jump right in, guys, and we have our first image right over here. And this is, let's see, from Josh. It's called Drive the Net. It was on a D5100, 18 to 200 millimeters at f4.5 at ISO 800. Now, when shooting, actually, is this a weird crop? Oh, no, it's the same. It looks like two images right there or something like that happened. Anyway, when shooting sports photography, I found that as soon as you start getting into it, and I'm not saying that you're new to this, but when you do start getting into it, you realize very quickly how sports players make some pretty ridiculous faces as they're doing whatever it is they're doing. Now, I love this shot for several reasons. His expression is probably actually one of them. It's a pretty hilarious expression, although I wouldn't say that this is one of those expressions that's going to go into like Sports Illustrated. But what I love about this image is just look at his muscles on this. It like literally every fiber of this guy's muscles is just taut, and it looks awesome. Has a lot of visual interest in this shot. Also, the expression is pretty hilarious. I think he would absolutely love to have this shot. From a photographic standpoint, I would say there's a couple things that could be improved upon. Number one is you typically would want to shoot the before and after sequences for shots like this. So you're generally, when you're shooting, every time someone comes down with the ball, you have your subject moving into frame. You're going to basically shoot wide enough that we can see what that subject is about to do. Right now, we're cut off from where this basketball player is going. And for those of us that are familiar with basketball, we obviously know that, well, anybody should know that there's the hoop off to his left side, and he's going for some sort of crazy move to try and get that ball in the hoop. But from a photographic standpoint, we don't see that in the shot. And so that we lose a little bit of interest there because we lose context of what's going on. The only other thing too is as they're coming down, you typically want to frame them on the side that they're moving towards. So basically you would open up and shoot a little bit wider with the hoop on the left side as they're moving towards it from right to left. So always leave the opening space in that frame. So basically if they're moving from right to left, your open side of your frame is going to be the left side and not the right side. If you leave them kind of on the edge of the frame moving towards the outside of the frame, it'll look like, well, it's going to look very strange because your action is moving out of the image and it's going to lead the eyes away. Last thing is, on all these kind of shots and all these kind of moments, you typically want to spam the shutter because you are going to get a lot of these kind of weird expression shots, and typically your before and after shots are going to be the better ones. So shoot like a sequence of 6, 7, 8 images whenever they get to this point, and generally one of those will have the exact action and the exact expression that you want. All right, so great job, Josh. Keep it up, and let's go on to the next image, which is Wing C08 or 008. This is a New York City long exposure D300S. It was on a 14 to 24 millimeter, 2.8 at 20 millimeters, and at a 30-second exposure, f13 ISO 200. Now, I love this shot. It's a great exposure and composition. The use of the long exposure is wonderful for making this water appear to be very glassy and kind of smooth, and it just has this nice foggy glow effect. I love it. It looks really nice in this shot. There's only two things that I would really critique about this shot. Everything else is wonderful. One is that it looks like you have some ambient light off to the camera right, basically coming across these pillars right here. And I love the use of these pillars in the composition. The only thing is I'd probably burn them down a little bit just so they don't have the same brightness as your city, because that's really the main focal point of this shot. And while these things add a lot of interest in that foreground, if we burn them down, they'd still add that interest while not being kind of as bright as the city in the background. The other thing I'd probably do is just Photoshop out this little light up here if possible. I mean, I know that's a lot of work, so obviously don't do it if you're not planning on blowing this up, but this is a great image to blow up on a canvas or to frame or to do whatever. And if you did that, I would recommend removing this light post first. This little kind of bit of cloud over here, I would leave that up to you. Because there's no other clouds in the sky, it almost kind of looks like a fold in the paper. Like if you were to print this out, it would look like the paper's basically been folded. So I'd probably clone that out as well, unless we had more clouds and we could clearly see that they were clouds. Otherwise, it might just look like a mistake or the paper's folded or something like that. All right, other than that, great job. Love it. Let's go on to the next shot. We have Jumping Joy here by Al Green. His name is Al Green. It's one word, LOL. I like that name, Al Green. That's a good name. All right, my mom's name is Jane Ann, actually, and that's one word too. So it's like two first names put together. All right, so this was shot at 1/800th of a second at 1.8 ISO 100 on a 50mm. We don't know the camera. Looks like they're using the preset system. I dig the processing on it. It looks really cool. And really the only thing I would say that could be critiqued about this, it's a great moment of what's probably your daughter or a friend's daughter. A great shot otherwise. The only thing is that her feet are a little bit too close to the bottom of the frame, and that kind of basically pulls away from the whole thing that she's jumping. I mean, you said that she's jumping. We can kind of see it from her hair bobbing up and down, but without being able to see her feet and to see the ground that she's lifting off of, we kind of lose that context there. So I would say shoot this a little bit wider, or if you cropped it, don't crop in that tight because we kind of need to see that jumping action. Otherwise, it's a great shot. I like the way you've positioned everything. If this is the family in the back, I'd probably shoot at an angle where you can see them. So it looks like you have dad or someone over here on the left holding another child. It looks like someone else on the right. If they're part of the shot, I would try and stop down to a more open, a closed aperture so that you can see a little bit more of that depth of field. They don't have to be in focus, but just so we can see them a little bit better, and then position them in camera so you can tell that they're in the shot and they're not blocked out by our primary subject here, the girl. All right, great job there, and let's go on to the next image. We have 979 submitting Whiskey. This is, he got a black background, so he took a shot of Gentleman Jack that he has. I dig this. I dig that you're getting into this type of photography. The shooting basically glass or anything that's going to create kind of these reflections or specular highlights is a very tricky thing, and we critique one of those that was, I think it was for a vodka. I think it was a Mandarin vodka. I forgot who did it, but it was another great shot. And when you're shooting these types of bottles or these types of objects, there's certain things you want to do to really reveal every bit about that shape and glass and everything like that. You've done a good job of bringing attention to this label on the cap, to also the label in the front of the bottle, and a little bit of the outside of kind of the shape and texture of this glass, and that's awesome. But we're missing a few things, and that's basically we're missing kind of the overall shape of the bottle. And you typically want to add lights on the left and right on a bottle like this that are fairly close, that are basically going to create edge lines around the bottle. It's basically going to highlight the entire shape of the bottle. You're going to have to use flags, and you're going to have to basically position the light. Things like this are very technical, very tricky, because you want to flag the light in ways that it's going to create shadows where you want those shadows, and where it's going to create highlights where you want to create highlights and bring out the shape of the bottle. What you're trying to do is really show the form and the curves and everything like that in that bottle, and also show the contents. So right now the contents are a little bit too dark. We see a little bit of brown over here, but we could do much better if we had, say, a light placed underneath the bottle that was kind of lighting up the contents of the bottle, or even behind the bottle and shooting kind of through with a very, very soft light that basically doesn't reveal itself into the camera as a light, but it just shows up as kind of brightening the whiskey that's inside the bottle. So it looks nice and brown, and has a lot of, it kind of adds a lot of depth to it with that additional color there. Okay, the last thing I would say is make sure if you are shooting on a black background and your subject is very dark like this, that you do something to lift it off the background. Now, if you do these lighting techniques that we're talking about, it'll kind of do it, it'll take care of itself, given that you're going to edge light everything, so these edges and the shape of the bottle pop a little bit. But something I also like to do is add a little background light onto that seamless, just to kind of bring out the color a little bit in the seamless, to kind of make that bottle really pop. All right, great job, 979, and feel free to resubmit this if you decide to reshoot it, and we can take a look at the new kind of setup that you did. All right, let's go on to car photography. This is by Infused Media. Hey, I know Infused Media. You have a awesome YouTube channel too. Getting into car photography, and let's see here. Any good methods for reducing reflections in Photoshop? I already use CPL most of the time. Reducing reflections in Photoshop. That's kind of tough. I don't know if I have any good methods off the top of my head that aren't. I mean, I know of things that are very, kind of crazy long as far as the approach to them, but I don't know of any short methods for that. Generally, you're trying to reduce as much reflection as possible in the shoot. A lot of times when they're shooting cars and they want to basically have none of these reflections, they'll shoot the car in the studio and then just composite the image with the background that they want, essentially. But otherwise, you're kind of going to be looking at essentially just replacing the entire window inside of Photoshop with the reflection that you want to have, like say it's the sky or whatever it is. So it wouldn't be that hard to basically clone out or essentially take this entire area and patch in the clouds so that you essentially have a nice kind of just open reflection of the clouds in the shot. As far as the shot itself, I like the processing. I like that it's not too heavy on the HDR. This is right where we kind of process our HDRs as well. I would say to just rotate the crop a tiny bit so that you actually straighten out these lines. That way we kind of have, it looks a little bit like it's tilted right now, which isn't a huge deal, but I always kind of try and fix those. But the only other thing is that it'd be cool that since this is a car and a concept photo kind of like this, the car kind of has a little bit, not as much emphasis as really the background and the rest of the scene. I'd kind of want a little bit more emphasis on the car by the position, the angle that you take. So it doesn't feel like the shot is necessarily just a car with a background. It feels like the shot is the car with a cool background. The background and the car are one right now that we don't have a very strong sense of subject due to the placement and due to the size of each in the frame. So I'd kind of adjust that just so that you have a little bit more emphasis on the true subject, which should be the car, and the background is kind of just the overall scene and placing that. All right, everything else is great. Let's go on to the next one, which is this University Library. This is by Christoph. Let's see, after way too many SLR Lounge videos, decided to visit some older shots and reprocess them. Well, this looks like you did a good job reprocessing this image. It actually looks really nice, and I don't see the banding issue, probably because this is too small. I wonder if there's a larger version of it we can check out. He mentioned that there was a banding issue here, so let's see. I still don't see too much of a banding issue. I see a little bit of noise, but not a lot of banding. So you've done a pretty good job. If you have cleaned it up, you've done a good job of cleaning up the banding. Let's see. And get a bit more focus on the people in the front. What do you think? Improvement would have been done different. I haven't seen the original shot of this, so it'd be tough to tell if there's improvement on it, but it looks great for what you have, basically. I really dig the shot. I like the overall composition. The production is great. It looks very nice, warm, has this kind of sunset tone to it, which looks great. I dig it. So good job, Christoph, and I think you did a great job with the reprocessing of that shot. So let's go on to our last one. This is by Wing C008 again. Wow, I didn't even realize that. I think we had one of your other shots in here, which is great. I just kind of pick these things randomly, so I choose the shots that I think are awesome, that could use some additional critique or just use praise. And this is one of those that is kind of the latter. It really just deserves a little bit more praise than anything. There's not too much that we can critique here. But I dig this shot. Let's go over how it was taken. So let's see. Criticism welcome. Let's see. I know it's not perfect, but I like it. A shot with a D350mm 1.4 G lens at 1/100th, 5.6, ISO 200 with an SB900 and an umbrella. Okay. First, great job with the lighting. The way that the background and her skin tones and everything kind of matches up, it looks flawless as far as that goes. It's a perfect type of light for your subject. It's a nice soft umbrella. And what really pulls this entire composition together is your use of coloring. And I think this was intentional. If it wasn't, then know that this is what really pulls this composition together, is that we have skin tones and these reds and also the background, which kind of all fits into this nice little pinkish, reddish hue color palette. Okay, so we have a little bit of earthy tones in the background matched with the skin, and then these red tones with the dress. And the processing and everything like that is what's giving it a really nice professional look and feel to this image. And it also almost has kind of this Hollywood filmic look to it, just because of that simple color schema that you've basically created with this image. Now, whenever possible, I always say if you can create a color schema with an image, it's going to look that much better. It adds a lot more production value to the overall shot. Other things that are adding great production value to this image is that she's made up extremely well. The hair is almost flawless. You have great features on the skin with really nice but natural makeup, and this beautiful red dress, which is kind of fitting perfectly. All in all, it works really, really well. There's one or two things that I would fix as far as retouch goes, which is there's a little branch here kind of sticking off the side of her head, and I'd also remove this one that's kind of going into her head, so it basically doesn't it doesn't look like it's essentially disappearing behind her or in her hair. I would typically try and shoot these little branches a little bit further away from her face, basically. This one's okay, but it's still a little bit close. Basically, we want these background objects to sort of break up the background, but not really to get in the way of our subject. So these ones over here get a little bit in the way. This one over here in the top right is just a tiny bit distracting because it's just such a little part of the frame. And so I'd really probably just remove that out. And then next time when you're placing it, try and place it in a way where you use these objects in the background to break up the background, but not necessarily to kind of interfere with the overall subject and stuff. But otherwise, I think it's a great job with this shot. I dig it from the shooting side, the composition, down to the expression, and to overall in your post-production. Everything else is awesome. I absolutely love it. So great job there. And that's it for this session of Constructive Critique, everyone. We'll see you all in the next episode.